All right, Aggie. And Philly Orkiki and anyone who's watching. You asked for it. So today, we're going to discuss Sonata Allegro form, the most important formal concept in Western art music. And pretty much remain that way. So, we're going to use Mozart 40 here, which is one of the clearest examples. I mean, especially because it's in minor, you can hear all these key center changes, which I usually can't hear if things are in major, but you know. So we're going to use Mozart 40 to discuss Sonata Allegro form. So right here, Sonata Allegro form, let's give a little history, developed in the kind of mid to late 1700s. So you had things like Bach wrote sonatas and Vivaldi wrote sonatas, but those aren't really sonatas in sonata form. Sonata just kind of meant anything that sounds or like a good tunes, you know, from Latin for sound. But then Haydn, Mozart, those early Mannheim symphonic school, they really solidified Sonata Allegro form and the whole form of symphonic movements as well. So let's get down to Mozart 40. So it's a controversial question whether there are 3 or 2 sections to Sonata Allegro form, because we have our exposition, which is this first section, our development, and then our recapitulation. Now it looks as if there are 3 sections here, 1, 2, 3, but many times, now it's not going to happen in Mozart 40, but it happens, for example, in the last movement of Mozart 41, is that kind of in the second movement of Mozart 40, is that you'd have repeats here. Now you always repeat the exposition for the most part. Now when you get into late Romantic music, that even goes away. So what you usually have is 1, 2, and then 1, 2. Because when you add repeats, now it looks like a two-part form. So mostly what's going to happen is in the classical period, it was a 2-part form. Get into the Romantic period, when the exposition itself, just repeated once, could take, 7 minutes. Like in Brahms too, like, oh my gosh. And then these become a two-part form. So classical 2-part, Romantic 3-part. Although in this piece, he does not repeat the exposition, but that does happen in other, or he does not repeat the second section. Okay, so what's going on here? So in the exposition, which is really the governing of everything, you can think of things as a gravitational motion. What goes up must come down. What the composer puts out for us that we hear must return in some form, okay? You're never going to hear, I mean, maybe some crazy romantics, you're never going to hear themes that just go away. Or let's just play this because it's pretty, and then he never comes back to it. That is not going to happen in Sonata Allegro form, especially in the classical period. So how does this work? So first of all, we made an intro, and many of the most famous symphonies actually don't have an intro. Beethoven 5 is an intro, and then that's when the theme begins. This one does not have an intro. I'm trying to think. Haydn 104 is an intro, before we get into the main theme. So if you have an intro, usually that won't come back, although maybe some ingenious composers work that in. Beethoven 4 has a great quiet intro before we really get into the rip roar and stuff. But so Mozart 40, we're going to start immediately with the theme as Beethoven 8 starts as well. And the P stands for primary. This is our primary theme. And we're going to hear it. And so there's a connection between, you got to really keep 2 things in mind. There's the theme and then the key of the theme, okay? So the key of the theme is in minor, G minor. Mozart 40 symphony, great symphony in G minor. So it's our minor 1. Now we write it with a lowercase to signify that it's minor. So this is actually redundancy. I don't need to do this, but just for the sake of exposition, we're going to write both of them. So the theme is in the minor 1. Okay, because in PTSK, or the exposition, you're going to have the primary theme, transitional material, the secondary theme, and the other tonal section, and then K, and that's closing. I honestly don't know why that's a K and not a C. It's probably German in some fashion. So our primary theme, da 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 da, okay, and that's going to need to get us to our secondary theme, because in sonata layer form there are usually two themes in the exposition, and along with being two themes in the exposition, usually we have two tonal areas. So what's going to happen is the minor is going to go to the major for the second theme. Now, how do we get from minor to major? We can't just suddenly play this theme, ba da 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 da, and then suddenly go to the second theme, ba ba da ba da ba ba da 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 da. We need to kind of create a little bridge, a little rainbow road to get us there. And it's windy outside. And that is what the transitional material does. So what the transitional material is going to do is transform the first theme into a major tonality, which will lead us to the major 5. So it kind of acquaints our ears to be prepared to listen to the new theme in the major. So the transitional material here is, and you'll hear it goes into major, it's ba 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 da ba 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 da ba 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 bum ba da 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 ba da 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 ba da da da, right? And then we go to the major. So let's just take a listen to that. Just these first two sections right now. Sort of the primary theme right now. We're going to cadence, but again, minor theme. Move to the transition. There we go. Now we're getting the major tonalities there. Bum, bum, bum. Cadential motion. Na, 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 na. All right. Great. I'm going to actually raise the volume there. Give me a sec. So we heard the theme, and then we heard the transition. Ba, 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 da, ba, 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 da, ba, and then the transition stopped. And now we're going to hear in major, because now our ears are acquainted to major, now we're going to hear the second theme in a major major tonality here. So let's listen to that. All right, bum, bam, okay. So if you heard that, the first theme is in the strings. The second theme is in the winds, right? And back in the day, back in the sexist days, they used to call it the primary theme, the masculine theme, the secondary theme, the feminine theme, because usually the secondary theme was not as aggressive, it was lighter, and it was in the winds. Now, those terms are out of use, but the point remains that a lot of times the primary theme will be in the strings, secondary theme will be in the winds, or you may say the primary theme will be more aggressive, more outspoken. The secondary theme will be more of a lilting, gentle theme. And we heard that here. This is why this symphony works so well. Okay, so now you heard the strings start to come back, and that's going to lead us to the closing theme. So let's play the closing theme. Excuse me, not the closing theme, the closing material. And in the closing material, you'll know it's this because it's going to have a lot of runs. You're going to have a lot of cadential motion. It's not going to be a theme, like a melody you can sing. It's just going to be a lot of dun 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 dun, stuff like that. Oh, what do we got? We're going to bring that theme back. So Mozart's playing with us right now because he knows we hear the end, but he's still going to give us a little bit of this. It's great. Runs. There we go. Oh, what's going to happen? Boom. Bam. Okay, now we're back. So let's actually just listen to this through, because we're going to have the repeat, and now let's try to hear all the things in context. Nice, good minor tonality. All right, now the winds are going to creep in here right there in the flute, bassoon. Ooh, it's changing our expectations. Bam! Right into the transition. Ba-dum-bum-bum. This is actually a reverse of the da-da-da, da-da-da, ba-da-da-da. So unified. Cut. Mostly you're not going to get that obvious of a cut, but we have it here. Secondary theme in the winds. Do you hear how it's still that da-da-da? We're still working on that same motivic material. There we go. There we go. Boom. Oh, he's gonna play with us. He's gonna play with us a little bit. Woo! All right. Whoa, listen to this. Woo, okay, now we're in a different section here. Bum, bum, so we didn't go repeat there. Now we are in the development section. Now, unfortunately, the development section is wild here, but it's pretty short. So what happens in the development section is the composer plays around with material from the two themes. He may choose, he may spend a lot of time playing with the secondary theme, may spend a lot of time playing with the primary theme. What the development is you're going to go to distant keys, okay, to transform that material. And in the classical period, you're going to cue pretty closely, and the theme is really always going to be in sight. Haydn 104 is an amazing development where the same motivic material is repeated. It's magnificent what he can do with just like three notes. So you're going to hear all the things we heard here. Mostly, I think, the primary theme in this development getting played around with. And it's just going to take us to distant key centers. And then the more oral skills you have, the better you can understand what's going on. But still, you can follow it from a thematic perspective a lot of the times in the development. So let's just listen up to that. All right, when you see that first theme, he's really always going to keep that in view. You know, it's great stuff. Oh, those low strings that just do it so much. Notice how that motivic, it's always there. A lot of call and response too. Oh, there we go. Where are we? Bam, we're back. Okay. So that was the development. It can get pretty crazy. If you were to analyze that, that actually does get really out. And he uses the clarinets, which he actually added to this after the first performance. Clarinets, oboe, bassoon, to really give some weird and out there harmony. Really through this whole symphony, there's a lot of odd harmonic movement, odd counterpoint, actually, because, you know, of course, these guys are masters of counterpoint, unlike the Romantic composers. But anyway, okay, so now we're back into the recapitulation. So what you're going to hear is pretty much the same as we heard before. But because, remember I said the gravitational motion, what goes up must come down. We must resolve this, because this is unstable. We must resolve this major 5 to minor 1. Now, one of the reasons I picked this symphony to demonstrate is because when you have a minor key symphony with a theme in the major, right, because a lot of the time we have major 1, major 5, when you put the theme in major from minor, it's going to sound really different when it goes back to minor. So it's going to be very easy to hear that transformation happen in the second theme, and it's also called the first tonal area, second tonal area. So let's listen to this, and then when I get to this, I'll stop it and explain. Now with the transition, remember I said we had to orient ourselves to go to the major, right? That's what the transition did. We don't have to do that anymore. The transition doesn't have to really take us anywhere. except prepare us to alter this theme that we heard before. So let's listen. Minor 1. This is pretty much going to sound exactly the same as before. Bam. Okay. Ooh! Ooh! What's that? Woo! Oh, look at that. We didn't have that transition there. We didn't feel that plastic. Now we're going to get a little expansion here. Just get, oh, hear that? We didn't have that the first time. And we can expand in the recap. We can do that. Oh, this is just unreal. And now, there we go. Bum, 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 bum. We heard this before. Woo, now listen how funky this sounds here. Ooh, ooh. Oh man, what is harmony? Here we go, coming out. Coming out. Ooh. Okay. Now, oh man, this is just so fucking good. Okay. Woo. This is so good. Now the last K, I said we got the expanded transition here. We can have an expanded closing material as well. And you're gonna hear that in this. I'm gonna stop it. There are about 4 bars at the end when shit gets really out. And we'll talk about that because that's very important, especially for what happens in Beethovenian symphonies where he actually gives us a second development, actually, because he introduced it, but we'll get to that later. That's Beethoven 3. So we'll hear the expanded material here, and it's about to go into stuff that you haven't heard, but you'll still hear lots of runs, lots of cadential motion. So let's hear it. Boom, we heard that before. We're all wholly in minor here. Heard this before. Expansion, right? Okay, now look at what he did there. Do you hear that? I don't know if you can hear this in the phone, and we'll hear this later. So he had us here thinking, let me get my cursor here. He has us here thinking he's going to end it, right? So, okay, now right there. Bum, bum. Okay, so we could go to the 1, we could end the symphony right there. But he's going to take us out, and the basses and the cellos, now they're actually written as one part here because that was kind of classical practice. The bass and the cellos are going to go ba ba da da ba da da da. Now what Beethoven would do is he'd drag the symphony out for another 3 minutes using that ba da, and he'd take us really out before returning us. But what Mozart does, he dangles us on that precipice of almost harmonic anarchy when we get some diminished harmony, But what does he do? You'll hear he brings us right back to that classical form and ends the symphony. So let's take another listen at these 4 bars here. We'll get us into it here. Okay. This all sounds like what we've heard before, all going good. There we go. And right after this wind material, right here. Oh, nope, he stops that. Okay, so that was just great classical kind of playfulness there, because us moderns, when we hear that, I remember listening to this youth symphony play a few weeks ago, and I first took notice of this. as a Beethovenian listener, and really a listener for the romantic, you hear something like that and you go, oh, here we go. We're gonna go places here. Like we're gonna have a second development. Then we have about 2 more minutes at least to this symphony, right? But where are we? We're in the classical era, okay? That's just not gonna happen. It's just not gonna happen, right? So it's almost more effective for us because we know what could happen, but bam, and then go bum ba ba dum ba ba dum ba ba. He zaps us back into classical reality, right? Because we're just not there yet. We're not ready for that kind of harmonic expansion. So anyway, then the symphony ends, and then some symphonies actually go back to the development. Most performers, even if the repeat is written in, will not go back to the development and do this. So you'll hear almost no one do this in Movement 4 of Mozart 41, greatest piece of music ever written. But the people who do are usually the period instrument performers. So you'll hear Hogwood do that, but like a guy like Klemperer or Carry On, these guys they're not in the business of that. They barely do that. They barely do the repeat in the exposition, which is even more important, right? So anyway, so that is Sonata Allegro form. Exposition, development, recapitulation. I encourage you, listen to that again, listen with this chart, because what this does is any first movement written from like 1750 to, 1910, at least in the 1890s, is going to follow this form. When you get into romantic, this is any genre as well. This is going to be string quartet, symphony, concerto. Now, concerto is actually a little different because the interaction with the soloist. It's actually kind of hard for me to hear that to this day, especially in Hummel. Very odd form. But anyway, you can use this to then listen. And what this opens you up to when you know Sonata Allegro form is that these pieces of music don't just become washes of themes and things that your brain is kind of picking up or letting go, right? Because what this tells you is you know what to listen for. And you can get inside the mind of what the composer was trying to do. So for example, by knowing that this is the closing section and then hearing that odd harmonic motion, you know where the playfulness is. You know what, he's almost trying to tempt you into coming along with him for a little more, right? You also can hear this, the transformation of the second theme. You know when the second theme happens, you know how to recognize the first theme, and you can appreciate the development because you will have identified these themes in your mind and then hear them transform. Now, this concept of identifying themes is so important, is why it's so important to take the repeat, especially for first-time listeners, so that they know for sure what happened. So let's say, this happened on Saturday. I thought, I think that's the second theme, right? And for me, I'm relying a lot upon actual themes, not keys, just because that's where my ears are right now. But then when they repeat, I can go, okay, yeah, that is right. I was right. And then we can enjoy the development, enjoy the recapitulation. So this really opens you up when you know Sonata Allegro form to just so much of Western art music. Because even if it's not a Sonata Allegro form proper, a lot of other forms do have this kind of exposition return, even in scherzo form. Even in you could turn a theme in variations, as kind of Mozart does in the second movement here, into a kind of Sonata Allegro form. So this is really the key that unlocks the door, to formally at least, to Western art music, and Mozart 40 is a great place to start. So there you go, Eggy. There you go, Philly Ortke. I hope you enjoyed this.